Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast. Today's guest, I've got Giovanna Silvestre, and she recently wrote a book called Confused Girl, Find Your Peace in the Chaos. And in this book, she is going to highlight how she can help, especially women, guide individuals who feel lost, unworthy, or stuck in life to find clarity, self-acceptance, and inner peace. So she provides a lot of actionable tools and inspiring wisdom, and I'm really happy to have her come on the podcast to share it. She's also from Los Angeles, and luckily, her loved ones are okay, and really happy to have her on. So, Giovanna, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Briefly introduce yourself, and I'm really excited to dive into the questions surrounding the book and your endeavors.
Yes. So my name's Giovanna Silvestre, and I recently wrote the book Confused Girl, Find Your Peace in the Chaos. And I've been an influencer for the last decade. I actually was an influencer before the term influencer even existed. I wasn't actually aiming for that, but I had started a yoga wear line called Confused Girl in the City over a decade ago.
Hmm.
And I utilized Instagram to sell my products. So I just became this default kind of influencer. So if you Google me now, it says influencer, but I consider myself more of an author and entrepreneur, but also very happy to be an influencer. That has been great as well.
Yeah. Really fascinating. And so, the first question I have for you is, what was the premise from, why, people, influencers, they're on YouTube, they got podcasts, or they go on radio, TV. What was it about writing a book how that helped you to reach your target audience?
Well, the thing is, none of my stuff was really planned or thought out too hardcore. Because I had always done that in my life. I had always tried to control everything and plan everything. And, I had, before I started all this, I had worked in the film industry for several years and then even thought I'd take over my parents' business and all to come to the conclusion that I'm not happy doing any of this and this is not a part of my purpose. So my goal wasn't, okay, 5 years from now, I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I'm doing this. It wasn't like that. It was like, I want to figure out. Well, first I fell into a depression. So it was like, first, let me get myself out of this hard, dark place, which I discuss all of this in my book. And then after I was able to get myself out of it, then it was, okay, who am I and why am I here? It's like I had kind of rebirthed myself. And so the goal was always to figure out who I was and why I was here and to figure out a path that was true to myself and then to trust the process and not to really plan anything out. So everything just kind of came. At first, I started a blog called Confused Girl in the City, where I just wanted to talk about how I was confused. And I decided to do one new thing every week that would lead me to discovering myself and figuring out who I was. And then that led to me starting a yoga wear line, which led to me writing a book. So it was it was just a kind of very flowy thing that happened. So I never thought too much about, this is going to be so different than other people, but I never thought too much about what are people looking for. I was more like, what is in my soul to express? And because see, the thing is like when you're coming from your true nature and you're doing things from that space, you come alive. And people need people who come alive.
Yeah. Very powerful. One thing that, as you were describing your process and your journey, one thing that came to my mind was your story strongly resembles that of Carrie Bradshaw in Sex and the City, where she was trying to figure out this whole relationship. And so we were talking backstage and you said very interestingly, confusion is a virtue. And a lot of people think that confusion is bad to be confused. We have to have it all figured out. And so how can why do you say confusion is a virtue, and how can it be a positive force rather than a negative experience?
Well, I say confusion is a virtue because I used to be the type of person that looked at my confusion as like something shameful. I wanted to be seen as someone who was like super confident and had all the answers, but it was just that was very image based. And once I so I felt confused. I was in the depression, then even after the depression, I'm like, what am I doing? What do I need to do here? The other things haven't really worked out. I wasn't happy. Why? And instead of rejecting my confusion, I embraced it.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, and I accepted it. And I got very real about I am confused. So, and it was in that moment where I was able to be really real and genuine about what was going on. Then I was like, okay, so now I'm going to discover something because you can't discover something and not have the question. You can't, you have to start out with the confusion, the question. You're confused about something, even a math problem. You
Mm.
know? I mean, the whole there's actually a beautiful part of being able to figure out a complex math equation. Because at first you're looking at it and you're like, I don't know." And then you're working your way, you're discovering how it all comes together and then you come up with your answer. And so I just wanted to take the shame out of it. And I'm like, actually, confusion is a virtue. And if you can figure out how to utilize this, it can like propel you so much further in your life.
Yeah, interesting. The other question I have for you is, you had the kind of a storybook career. You went to Los Angeles, and you made it in the film and entertainment industry. And a lot of people's like, wow, I wish I could have that. But then you're describing this thing where it's like you kind of veered off path. And so, to people listening, is like, while you had it all, but we still confused. So how do you reconcile these two? And why is sometimes following this kind of glitz and glamour that everybody's like, oh, you have this, how can that be detrimental to someone who's else?
Well, because you're buying into the illusion. And one thing that people learn real quickly when they start working in the entertainment industry is like it's all like all illusion. And it actually I'm so happy I had that experience because I mean it really gives you like a thicker skin. You learn how to survive and it pulled back the curtain. So years ago, like everything that's coming out now, of course I didn't go to any Diddy parties and I wasn't a part of that crowd, but I just saw for myself, like, the narcissism. I didn't see people really happy and joyful and creating. It was a lot of ego games, and I was like, "Wow, this is really brutal and quite painful," and
Mm.
I don't want to become so hardened because I saw that to be in that industry to survive and do well, you have to harden yourself, and you have to be ready to take somebody down too, and I'm just not willing to do that. I'm like, "I was raised well. I don't need this." And so but amazing experience. So grateful I did it. It totally added to my character and, just the wisdom. And so I really I really think we're taught that our lives are like a checklist we need to check off. Oh, boyfriend, check off. 2 years married, check off. Kids, check off. Home, mortgage, check off. Good careers, check. And it's just like this list of check offs. And then once you check all the things off, you're like, you add something else you got to check off. And it's just like this never ending cycle. And I think a lot of people, if they don't know who they are to begin with, they get to this point where they're like, I've done everything that I thought was asked of me and I should do. And I am miserable. And now I am stuck in this life that I don't want. And so that's why you have to figure out your true nature. And listen, I'm not trying to tell anybody how to live life. If it's your true nature to get married and have kids and have a family, hi, go for it. I say yes. If it's your true nature to be a career person or whatever, go live on a boat somewhere and do odd end jobs, do it. I'm all about you have well, I actually believe in past lives. But as of right now, you have this one life in this body. You have a limited amount of time. You never know when it's going to be over. So why not connect with yourself, get to know yourself, and then do life from that point?
Yeah. Really very insightful and very powerful. And so next, like talk about this an example or a story where confusion helped you to gain clarity. That's kind of really interesting. I'm curious to hear your journey.
Yeah, well, I first started again, remember I told you everything flowed. I did not have an idea for a yoga wear line, and then I didn't know I was going to write a book. That all just kind of happened. But it was all inspired. I was inspired and I did it. But how it started was I was like, I'm confused. And blogging, this is over a decade ago. Vlogging was really big at the time. So I was like, oh my gosh, I want to start a blog called Confused Girl in the City. And on this video blog on YouTube, I I said to myself, okay, every week I am going to do one new thing that I've never done before in an attempt to figure out who I am and why I'm here and what I like and what I don't like. And I even wrote on a Post-it and had it on like up on the wall, and it said, "This is a gift to yourself." Because I didn't want this to be another checklist. I didn't want this to be another thing I was trying to make something happen with. I was like, "This is my gift to myself." And and so that's how I began kind of unraveling the confusion, which led me on this amazing adventure of self-discovery.
Yeah. In this we're kind of coming we're about halfway through, and so that latter half where we talk about the role of patience and then also like techniques that can bring clarity from confusion. And so what practices, because you mentioned yoga, and what other habits helped you to process confusion constructively and gain clarity?
You know, it's honestly, it's all about connecting with yourself,
Mm.
right? And it's also about experimenting with life and figuring out the things that you enjoy doing that bring you some sort of peace. Because the inspiration and the connection and all the things, that comes from the peace. Not gonna come when you're in survival mode or when you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off. You gotta get quiet. So, I mean, it's about figuring out the thing that you like to do that helps you get quiet. So for me, yoga is a great tool. And I know yoga's become like very, it's very mainstream and everyone's like, "Oh, yoga," but it really helps me. It really when I'm doing a yoga class, I just quiet down. My mind gets quiet. Or when I do my walks by the beach and I'll listen to a walking meditation on YouTube and just walk by the beach and just and you sometimes you have to make yourself enjoy things. You have to, because you're thinking about all these things I need to do or all these things I don't have, and that's a lack mentality. So you want to put yourself in an abundant mentality. You want to put yourself in, oh, I'm walking by, the ocean today. Wow, it looks so beautiful. Let me just take a moment and listen to the waves and like just take a moment just to appreciate that I get to live here. It's little things like that. And if you can do those things consistently every day, you're switching into abundant mentality. You're switching into more peace, more gratitude. And then from there, that's when you'll be able to unravel your confusion. A lot of people create chaos. It's like an endless amount of chaos so that they don't ever they don't have to ever question anything. But if you're already questioning, then you need to get the peace to unravel the onion that is you.
Yeah. It reminds me of this story because, a lot of the stories that you're sharing resonate with my personal journey. And like one time I was like, I was undergrad and I was so stressed. I was like, had like MCATs and like trying to get into med school. And I was just it was so stressful. And I was just like, and then like, some of the best advice from my intuition was like, if you just let go. And I was like, and it was like, I just practiced it. I was like, let go. And it was just like, it's like the whole world opened up. And so what role does patience and letting go play in confusing times, and how can people cultivate this?
Well, that I'm really so happy you asked me that because we didn't like have any pre-plans. So like that's an amazing question. And I have learned so much about patience and letting go and how it can bring you something that you never thought could be possible. So after I wrote my book for 2 years, I was being rejected. I got an agent. I got an agent, a really good, a really reputable agent. Then for 2 years, my book was rejected by publishers. But because of all the work that I did, that I write about in my book, I no longer attach my self-worth to things I have done. I no longer attach my self-worth to success or things that didn't meet my expectations. I I I literally was like, I have worth because I'm existing in this world and I'm a good human. And so I feel like I have worth. And so I really did just let it go. I let it go in my head and I was like, okay. And a year went by and I kind of, doubt crept in and I'm like, well, we are going through COVID and we'll just see what happens. But I just, again, let it go, let it go.
Mm.
And then my father got sick with cancer. So I was very just consumed with him and what was going on with him. So I wasn't thinking about the book stuff. And then 2 months before my father died, two publishing companies had a bidding war on my book. And my father got to see it all. He got to see the negotiations. He got to see these people on Zoom because he was like in the background just listening. He got to hear like what they thought about my book and how they thought it was so amazing that I'm saying confusion is a virtue and all these things. And I was so happy that my dad got to know that. Because my dad was an immigrant, who came here from Italy and worked really hard for us to have opportunity. So that was a very big thing for him. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful for that. What divine timing. Like if I would have controlled that or forced that or had not let it go and had not been patient, I might have taken it away from my agent after a year and tried to self-publish. I might have destroyed that instead of just letting it go and letting time do its thing. And then the timing hit at the most beautiful moment where at the time in my life where I was experiencing the greatest amount of tragedy, I also had the greatest opportunity and some hope. And so when you show up in your life and do the work, but then you can let it go and still create joy, concentrate on other things and not obsess, have patience. I am like a living testament that is something great is coming your way. Like it works.
Yeah. Yeah. It was fascinating, just this process of just, just let it go. And you actually, you're just like, it's like you're clean to somebody. And then so a lot of the audience, they're entrepreneurs, they're very driven, very successful, doctor, lawyer, business. And so one of this idea of letting go, and they have trouble letting go, is because let's say they let go and the outcome doesn't play out the way they want it. So they feel like if they hadn't let go and they controlled everything, the outcome will be different. How do you reconcile that? Because people are like, "Yeah, I let go, but this didn't happen. This didn't work out. I didn't get what I wanted." So how do you address that?
At some point you have to surrender and you have to come to terms with that you're not God. And I know that's hard for doctors a lot of times because they play God, they save lives. And so that can be a really hard thing to wrap your head around because and I get it too, especially when you're, a lawyer or a doctor or aeronautical engineer. There's so much schooling that takes place you're you have to be able to do those jobs, you have to pay attention, you have to learn. It's all on you. It requires a mass amount of discipline and it's all you, right?
Yes.
So your brain is already trained and programmed to everything comes from me. If I'm going to get something done, it has to come from me. and my intellect and, what I can control. But the thing is there is this other part of life. And that's the part that you don't control. That's you get sick. There's a loss of a loved one. Even when you're operating on somebody, and it could go either way. Maybe there's a prayer that could be said in that moment. I look at life like, and I've said this on another podcast too, is I look at life like a dance, okay? Like the
Mm.
tango. And you show up, and even imagine I'm a doctor, okay? I'm a doctor. And I show up and I know my moves. I have practice. I have done my residency. I have done all the things, and I'm showing up looking gorgeous, and I am ready to do the operations. I am ready to dance. But you need a partner, and you got to let it guide you. And I consider the partner life. Like life is your dancing partner. And if you can learn to dance with life, your life is gonna be a lot easier. If you're always trying to control it and play God, your life's gonna be kind of painful. It's not gonna be as easy. So it's up to you what you wanna do. I mean, you can do it your way and just, like, think you're God, but at some point, it's gonna blow up in your face.
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. And so how can people find you and follow you and check out your book and reach out to you and learn find out more about you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, confusedgirlinthecity.com, and you'll see my book there. You can pre-order it now. And it's on Amazon. So if you put in confused girl, find your peace in the chaos, it'll pop up on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. And follow me on Instagram and say hi at confused girl LA. I'd love to meet some of your audience. Say hi.
Yeah. And really inspiring conversation and keep up the great work.
Yeah, thank you. You as well. Thank you for what you're doing.